Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special Earth Day event with NASA. Yes, the NASA. We're here today to celebrate our amazing planet and to learn from one of the foremost experts in climate science. I'm your host, George Malukaran, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today. Before we get started, let's do a couple housekeeping things. Let's do a roll call in the chat. Where are you tuning in from? Who are you with? We want to hear from you, so feel free to share your location and the questions you might have for today's event. Oh, and don't forget your cameras because we're going to take a selfie with our special guest later on. This is going to be so much fun, so let the countdown begin. Welcome, 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 and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining in from. We have a global audience with us today. And a big shout out to all of you here from Ohio, India, Canada, Spain, New York, Mexico, Miss Cole's class from Seattle, fourth grade from Cliffside Park, New Jersey, and Kansas. I want to stop on this one, Kansas, personal and not biased, but I'm actually broadcasting right now from Kansas in my folks' home. And I was just kind of like, they're watching downstairs, so hopefully the Wi-Fi works. And if you hear a home phone, that's probably just, they're still using the home phone. But anyways, I found this photo of me. I don't know if we can make it bigger here, JB. Oh, there we go. That's young lad George, a little bit of a NASA enthusiast. His belt is too tight. Just full of dreams. He's keeping it all together. But this is such a special moment for me because we are going to be able to speak with Dr. Rachel Louise Tilling, who's from NASA, talking about climate change. And so this is really cool for us, and we're really excited to have her. And let me formally introduce her. Dr. Rachel Louise Tilling, a polar scientist at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. Dr. Tilling is a leading expert in the field of climate science, and we are so honored to have her with us today. So with that, let's introduce Dr. Tilling. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to talk to everyone today.
We are honored to have you in such a special event for Earth Day. Nothing to talk about our planet and space and what you're working on. But before that, I would love to kind of take things back and just have you share a little about your background and your journey to NASA.
Absolutely. I would say my journey to NASA probably wasn't an obvious one. I don't know if you can recognize by the accent, but I'm not from the USA. I grew up in a small farming village in England, so about as far away as I could imagine from the bright lights of NASA, right? I never thought I would end up working here. I never thought I could because I wasn't from the USA, but I just loved being outdoors growing up, no matter what the weather, rain, snow, mud, anything. I just loved being outside. And I also love figuring out how things work. I love taking things apart and putting them back together again. And that led me to study physics at university, and then eventually bringing together my love for the outdoors with my love for physics and how things work to end up at NASA after doing my PhD, which is awesome.
Very, very cool. And so how did you get interested in studying climate change?
I think because of my love of the outdoors, I've always been absolutely fascinated by nature. I was really, really lucky growing up to learn how to scuba dive and just really appreciated the outdoors. And you want to protect what you love, right? I wanted to protect the outdoors and nature in some capacity. And that's how I really got interested in climate change, through seeing changes in our natural environment day to day, living in the countryside and going scuba diving and seeing changes to coral reefs in these various places around the world, and realizing that, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is a beautiful planet and we only have one. It's our planet. So I want to commit myself to helping to protect that.
I love that. And I love how our passions really kind of navigate us in the journey that we're on. And, it was just a pure sense of joy in the outdoors. And the way you brought it in and that is now translated to the career you have now with your research, which I'd love to dive in a little deep. Can you tell us a little bit more about your current research and what you're currently focusing in on?
I could talk all day about my research, but we don't have that much time. So I'll just summarize it. I use satellites to study the polar regions, and NASA has this awesome satellite called ISAT-2, which is a laser. It's a literal space laser, and it's orbiting kind of 500 kilometers up and firing laser pulses, 10,000 laser pulses every second at the Earth's surface. And what we can do with that is measure from the returns the height of individual surfaces across the globe, including sea ice, which is what I study. It's the frozen ocean. So we can sense the height of sea ice, and when we do repeat measurements of that, we can see how much the height of the sea ice is changing, which we can use to estimate just how much ice is melting and the impact that global warming is having on the polar regions.
Very cool. That's so fascinating. And it's interesting, like taking a step back, like, NASA, we all think about, space and like the stars and stuff like that, which is a frontier that not many, humans like really get to experience. And the other one that's on planet Earth is like the Arctic and Antarctica. And your research takes you there. Can you tell us more about those like experiences working in those climates and environments?
It's the most incredible experience. And it does feel like another world, even though you are still on planet Earth. They're at two different poles of our Earth. And I've never experienced anything like it when you get there. Like I said, I studied the frozen ocean. That's actually only a couple of meters thick, and it's not one big solid mass. It's loads of lumps of frozen ice that float around freely on the ocean. So I'm standing on these blocks doing my science measurements with little radars or digging holes in the snow, and I'm moving around on the ocean. You can travel kilometers a day when you're doing this kind of work, and sometimes you have to stop yourself and just think, what am I doing? This is, when you think about it, it's pretty nuts, but it's beautiful. It's a little bit scary, but that makes it exciting. And I would spend all of my time there if I could, but I have to come back and analyze the data sometimes as well. So I also just sit in the office and program a lot.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to imagine you literally surfing on like a giant piece of ice. Like that's thrilling. That's essentially what you are, an ice surfer, like first of its kind. It's very impressive. Going back to like the research, I'm curious as an expert, what do you think are some of the most pressing environmental challenges facing our planet right now, and what can we do as global citizens to really address them?
One of the biggest things I always think about, and because I study the Arctic, is the decline in Arctic sea ice. We have satellite data that shows us for the last 40 years, the area of sea ice in the Arctic has decreased by about half. And I always say to people that we have to try not to think of the Arctic as this far off land, because what happens there impacts all of us. It doesn't just impact the indigenous communities that live around the Arctic, which is a huge, huge thing for them, but also for global communities, because changes in sea ice impact the atmosphere, they impact the ocean, and that's all linked across the globe. So that can eventually impact the weather and the climate where we live. Even me, for example, sitting in Washington, D.C., I will start to see those impacts here.
Right. Yeah. It's really easy to like forget about it because it's not like in your backyard, but it's all something that we can really take ownership of and really make a difference in. With that, would you say what are the most promising developments you've seen in the fight against climate change?
I think one of the things that really excites me is seeing the younger generations actually really caring. I mean, you've all joined today. You have awesome teachers who have joined with you today, and to see people getting involved, to talk about climate change, to want to understand what it is and the impacts it has, and hopefully creating the next generation of climate scientists, of environmental scientists, and NASA employees.
I love that. I'm glad you brought that up because this future generation is watching right now. I know there's tons of students watching this event, and we actually been gathering some video questions over the past couple of weeks from students around the world, and I'd love to be able to share a few of those questions here, what they're most curious about for you to answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, I would love to.
All right, let's roll the first video question.
Hi, my name is Anya, and I'm from Nigeria. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face in your work?
I love that question. So Enya is asking, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in your work?
There are so many practical challenges associated with my work. I already mentioned programming. When I get a bug in my code, it seems obvious, but that can frustrate me for days when I don't know why my science isn't working. Or when you're out on field work, you have to have people on the ice and you're trying to time that with a satellite flying over the top of you, and then an airplane trying to get under that satellite track, and trying to match all of those things up when you're somewhere that has really terrible radio contact and you're really far from land is definitely a challenge. So they're some of the biggest practical things, but I would say actually my biggest challenge, which might be a surprising answer, is probably a personal one, and that's self-doubt, because I've always had this self-doubt thinking, oh no, I shouldn't apply for this, I'm not good enough, or oh, maybe people will realize that I shouldn't be here. And it's taken me many years to realize that actually no, I should be here. And we all fail, right? Everyone is human, failure happens, and I can take that and I can learn from that, pick myself back up and persevere. So I think, yeah, a big challenge is working through failure and not taking it as a sign that you're not worthy to do whatever it is that your passion is telling you to do.
I'm really glad you shared that, and I think it's very resonating for me, and I believe the entire audience is because there is a lot of self-doubt. It's like very human for us to like have like, you know, am I good enough? Am I going to be able to do this? Like, and to see you saying that, you know, working at NASA, like the top tier, but to have that, you know, growth mindset to continue to keep pushing forward is really, really inspiring. So thank you again for sharing that. I think that definitely is the piece I took away. That's really cool, as well as the moving target of coding that you're doing, like, you know, constantly with satellites. That's wild. That's more complicated than I can imagine than darts. Anyways, we have another question coming in from Indiana. Let's roll it.
My name is Hayden from Indianapolis in the USA. What are some skills that you think are necessary for someone pursuing a career in environmental science?
I love that question, Hayden. I love your background. It's so bright and green. Hayden is asking, what are some of the key skills that you think are necessary for someone pursuing a career in environmental science?
For me, I would say passion and enthusiasm. I always joke that I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but then I realize, oh no, actually I am grown up and I am doing it. And I think it's just follow what you love, because even if it's not physics, which is what I did, I work every day with people from so many different backgrounds. I work with engineers, biologists, people who work in media, photographers, pilots. There's so many different ways to help support environmental science and environmental causes, even if it's not the same route that I've taken. So be passionate and be interested, be excited, and don't be scared to ask questions. That's a big one that I've learned. And that's a skill. You have to practice being able to say, I don't actually understand this, and then asking for help.
Yeah, definitely being curious. And then also at the core of it, like, you know, making sure your passion is there. Like, I think sometimes when you get to be an adult, doesn't mean your passion like diminishes. Like, you use that passion, you let that, like, you know, really fuel you. And like you shared earlier, like your passion was for the outdoors, and that's how you really felt a, you know, ownership around it and wanted to do more and research and really make a difference. So I love that. At the very first, just like be interested, be passionate, be curious. All right, our next question is coming in from Canada. Let's roll it.
Hi, my name is Sophia and I am from Canada. My question is, what can we do in our everyday life to help fight climate change and protect our environment?
I love that question. It's kind of echoed throughout this entire event. Sophia from Canada is asking, what can we all do to combat climate change and protect our environment in our everyday life?
As I said, you're already doing it. The key thing really is stay educated, stay engaged, make sure you're up to date even on the latest science about climate change. So if you have someone in your life that maybe you want to talk to about that, who doesn't know as much about it as you do, you can be that. I call it being an ambassador for Earth. You can be an ambassador for Earth just by knowing what climate change is, how it's impacting us, and talking to people about it and being passionate about it. And I just feel like that's what I do in my job. I am an ambassador for Earth through collecting data and giving it to the people who can make those big decisions for us.
I love it. I love that too. We should all get like kind of a badge. You know, we're all global like ambassadors of it. We're all in this together. We're a part of it. We're the task force. Thank you so much. Those are some great video questions. We also have some questions in the chat happening right now that I'd love to get to as well. So the first question is from Catherine, which is kind of the same lines as the previous question, but how can we save Antarctica from climate change?
Oh, that's a big one. And I think it really, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's the same thing. If we if we are communicating the impacts that climate change have on our planet, then we can drive the changes at a higher level that mean we can decrease our carbon emissions, for example, and we can help support communities to decrease their carbon emissions. And we know that if we have even one summer, for example, where temperatures are slightly cooler, we see the ice in the Arctic making a bit of a comeback. So if we can turn that into something that happens more regularly, I still have hope that in the future we can see something positive happening.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for sharing that. Another question from Miss Cole's first grade class: how thick is the sea ice? That's a good question.
That's a great question. It really depends. So the thinnest sea ice that I've stood on is only 15 centimeters thick. And you can stand on that and you can work on that. But it gets up to about 5 to 6 meters thick. That's the thickest ice that I've seen when I've been out there. So it doesn't sound that thick at all. And when you think about it, we are landing planes on this ice. So we're landing planes on ice that's only 3 meters thick and is moving. So it's an awesome job.
Very cool. Wow. Yeah, that's I just imagine like still thinking about basically that surfboard analogy, like a like an ice surfboard over 3 meters thick. Yeah, the visualizing is mind-boggling. Another question is from Mrs. B's kindergarten class. I love this. Have you taken pictures of polar bears and have you seen penguins?
See, I've never seen a polar bear, and this is one of the things that I'm sad about, and that's why I have to go back to the Arctic so that I can see a polar bear, because I really, really want to. But I've been really lucky that I've seen a lot of penguins. And one of the great things about working in Antarctica is, for some reason, penguins love it when you have sleds that you drag your science equipment on. I don't know if they think they're little penguins or something, but they all just follow you around for hours, just following you, watching you work, trying to kind of get involved. And that's definitely one of my favorite things about working in Antarctica is the penguins.
Oh, I love that. That means more reason enough for me. Another question from Miss Goldman and Mr. Crabtree's class. Isaiah would like to know, how often do you go to the Arctic? That's a good question. I'm also curious.
Not often enough. I would love to go there all the time, but I go maybe once every couple of years, and it's been less during COVID. So the last time I actually went to Antarctica was nearly 5 years ago now, and hoping to go back soon, hopefully next year, fingers crossed, and yeah, back to the Arctic next year as well.
Love it. All right. Mikey from Mrs. Sherwood's class asks, what tools do you use to drill into the ice to gather data? Yeah, is it like a jackhammer? Like, what is it? Is it like a giant drill?
It's a massive ice drill, which is super cool. So you're just there kind of drilling and drilling and drilling, and that's what you need to do to find out how thick the ice is. But it can be kind of scary sometimes because you'll drill all the way through with this. The drill bit's like this. I mean, it's a big drill. And then if the ice is kind of somewhat submerged below the waterline, it starts to flood. So then you're standing on ice that isn't just moving, it's flooding as well. But like I said, adds to the fun of it.
Yeah, I bet. Another question is, and this is particular to like your career, like what was your favorite subject to study, and like what inspired you to work specifically as a polar scientist for NASA? And then I love this. This is 3 questions, so I can repeat them. How can we as kids spread the word?
I had 2 favorite subjects at school. One of them was English literature because I just love reading, and the other one was physics. And I was torn between which one to study and went on to do physics. But yeah, I think the love of reading really helped because it put me in a place where I felt more able to write scientific papers, for example. And polar science, honestly, I watched the Frozen Planet series when I was growing up, and I just really wanted to go to the Arctic and the Antarctic, and kind of set me off on a mission of how can I combine physics and the polar regions. And that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And then a question from Florida, from Amelia. What accomplishments in your early life has led you to work for NASA? Oh, yeah, I like that.
That is a great one because I'm not sure. Like I said, I never had this set plan of I'm going to go work for NASA because I just didn't think it was possible. But studying physics was a big one because that put me on the path to doing a PhD in climate physics, which is one of the big things NASA are looking for at the minute. We have a huge Earth science department and we're launching more and more satellites to study Earth. So Earth science is a big one that NASA are looking for people coming in that are studying Earth science. And I think, again, just being outdoors, scuba diving, loving all of these things, and just wanting to find a job that involved environmental studies in some way.
Love it. Well, there's a lot of fans out there that want to be working at NASA, it seems like. And the question is, can you give some pro tips to work at NASA? Because I want to work at NASA. So is there any, what would you say? It sounds like you gave a lot of really following your passions, but anything in particular you can think of that would be really helpful in really setting that up?
I'd say pro tips, again, following your passion. And the other thing is NASA do internships, and we don't just do internships for people who are in university. We do internships for people at various stages of their education. Even if you're still at school, you can do an internship at NASA. So I would say look that up, apply, and if you see someone that's advertising something that is really interesting to you, don't be scared just to contact them and ask them and say, hey, I've seen this and I'd be really interested in learning more about this internship that you have.
Love it. Another, I guess, more general question. What would you say is the most favorite part of your job and the most challenging part of your job? Or the least favorite, I guess, let's say, about your job?
My favorite part of the job is actually the people. I consider myself really lucky because you get to travel so much as part of the job. So you get to meet so many different people from all across the world in so many exciting places, and they become friends. And that was something that was really tricky during COVID, actually, was all these friends you've built up going to various meetings and field work, and you haven't seen them in years. So I've been starting to hang out with them all again, and just it really reminds me that is a huge plus of the job. And it's not something that you might immediately think of, but I really love that part of it. The least favorite part, I think one of the things that has taken a lot of time to get over is being a woman in a male-dominated field, especially on field work when it's a lot of quite a macho environment, and feeling like sometimes I have to work twice as hard to feel like I deserve to be there. And that goes along with the self-doubt as well, as realizing you deserve to be there just as much as anyone else. Like, you've worked hard to be here, and that definitely was something that took time to overcome, for sure.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And thank you for sharing that. Another question from San Diego, from Azul. How do you coordinate all the communication between the pilot, the scientists, and everyone else?
With a lot of difficulty. It's sometimes your radios stop working, so you're relying on satellite phones, which only work if there's kind of satellite communication at the time. So you have to have a really solid plan before you set off so that everyone knows exactly what you're doing, exactly where you're going, exactly where the satellite is going to be, because there's just so many things that can go wrong, and it does go wrong, and you can't help that sometimes. But you regroup, you come back to base, and you come up with another plan, and you just have to try and do it again.
Yeah, and you learn from it, right? Like, again, that's like that growth mindset. Like, it's okay. Like that, those failures are something to learn from to do better next time. So I love that. And then, Grayson Kennedy from Mrs. Sherwood's class. How exactly do you gather data, and how long are you in the Arctic when you're studying that data?
We have so many different ways of collecting data, but one of the things that I love doing the most, one of the satellites I worked on previously it used radar, so it used radio waves to look at the sea ice. And I essentially had a tiny little version of the radar that was on that satellite that I pulled along on a sled across the sea ice and just took radar measurements. And you could take all day doing that. And then you would come back to your tent, for example. Once I was actually camping on the sea ice for a week, and it was probably the most uncomfortable I've ever been, but also the best thing I've ever done. So that was a week camping on the ice. And usually I'm on a ship, though. In Antarctica, I was on the ship for 2 months, and it's actually nice and cozy and comfortable on the ship. But the ice camp is my favorite. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, one more question from chat. what has been the most important discovery you've made so far in your eyes?
That's a great one. And it goes back to what I was, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about we've learned through satellite data and satellite data that I collected during my PhD, actually, that if you have just some cool weather, it doesn't have to be a lot of cool weather, you can see a recovery in the amount of ice in the Arctic. And that's something we weren't necessarily expecting. It was surprising. And it's something that it gave me hope that if we do keep communicating, if we do keep researching, and we curve our global carbon emissions, then hopefully we can see something positive happening in the polar regions. And there is still a chance that we can save the polar ice that is currently melting very rapidly.
Yeah, that I love that optimism, and like that's what keeps us going, right? Like there's still hope, there's still power, and like we can all do it collectively together. And those important milestones and discoveries really get us there to do better. I love those questions. Wow, really thoughtful. Thank you to everyone that dropped those in the chat. Thank you, Dr. Tilling, for answering those. I know we're wrapping up our event very shortly, but Dr. Tilling, is there anything you would like to leave our audience with before it's time to go?
I just want to say thank you for all your questions. They were awesome questions. They made me think. And like I said, just keep being an ambassador for Earth. If that's your passion, it will get you far.
Love it. All right. And before we go, I do want to take a chance. Our favorite part is the selfie moment. And so everyone out there, get your cameras ready, gather in front of the screen, jump out of that beanbag. If you're at a classroom, at home, wherever you're watching from, we'll give you a few seconds to get ready and set up. But in the meantime, we'll cue with some music. All right, are we ready? All right, let's take some selfies. That was so cool. That was fun. I got my selfie here. Actually, this one is on my phone. And we want to see all your selfies. So please post them on social. Share your favorite moment from today's event. Make sure to tag us on social. We have here on the bottom. Thank you, Dr. Tilling. That was so much fun. Thanks for that moment. That's always my favorite part of the show. And thank you for your time. I think most importantly, what I've taken away from this is like just by being a part of conversations like this with you and creating that dialogue, we're all still making a difference, whether or not we're, out there doing the incredible research you are, but just like starting that discussion and having that passion to really be, owners of this global world that we live a part of. I can't thank you enough. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.
All right, that was amazing. And now the learning and inspiration is never over. Head on over to aka.ms/NASA STEM. The NASA team has created some amazing collection of activities for your students to reflect on all that they learned today in today's event. This Earth Science collection has incredible hands-on activities and more that you can do today to spark your conversation in your class. So start exploring them now. And now, even though we're wrapping up, we have flip events almost every week. Next week, we're going to meet Dina Saunders for an introduction to AI in search. She'll be answering all your burning questions about AI. And on April 2nd, we are meeting best-selling author Ryan T. Higgins to take a virtual tour of his studio and learn how he creates his characters. And then on May 4th, you're invited to join us for a magical event with Brad Montague as he takes us on a journey through the fantastic world of imagination. Head on over to aka.ms/flip events to find an adventure that sparks your curiosity. And if you're looking for more STEM live online learning lessons and experts to connect with your students, go to takelessons.com. That's it for today. I'm your host, George Malukaran. On behalf of Flip, the NASA STEM team, and our amazing guest, Dr. Tilling, thank you for spending time with us, and we'll see you next time.